live in Beliveau, and I would like to take a few minutes of your time to explain something that I feel is very important that is happening in Goffstown. I ask that you give me an opportunity to share my concern with you. Before I do that, I would like to let you know who I am in some lengthy detail as a way of explaining why I feel qualified to make some observations about Goffstown. I've been in Goffstown for a long time, and I love this town. I have lived in Goffstown for the last 43 years in the same house. My wife and I have 5 kids and 2 grandchildren. Our kids are all grown up, and they have been moving around the world, except when they come home to roost once in a while, as their personal experiences have changed occasionally. I was in the Air Force ROTC in college and eventually became a platoon sergeant in the United States Marine Corps Reserve from 1965 to 1973 during the Vietnam era. Since the Marines were never activated during that time, I was able to start a corporate career and raise a family in Goffstown. Essentially, I'm an up-through-the-ranks kind of person that started out as a technician, became a technical specialist, supervisor, and manager before becoming involved with operations management. During my 30-year corporate career, I worked for 7 different companies. I started with Cabot Corporation, then Polaroid, Exxon Enterprises, High Voltage Engineering, 2 small local companies, and finally with 3M Corporation. Those were all fertile training grounds. With 3M Corporation, my final job in Massachusetts, I had responsibility for 3 different plants in 3 cities, 7 different manufacturing operations, and directly managed 35 hourly and salary employees. Because my positions were ultimately eliminated in all of those companies for various reasons, I had to find a way to feed my family during the occasionally long intervals between jobs. In Goffstown, I started a hobby business that I named Belknap Kennels. I have always found a way to take care of my family without any support from others or the government. As part of that Belknap Kennels operation, I became interested in sled dogs, a popular New Hampshire sport, and I first raced in the World's Championship sled dog race in Laconia in 1971. Some of my sled dog friends went to Antarctica with Admiral Byrd, and I have been thousands of miles every year in the New Hampshire woods behind large dog teams. I love the state of New Hampshire for its attention to balancing the needs of family, businesses, and nature. I feel that it is very important to find a way to continue to find a legitimate way to balance the legitimate needs of all New Hampshire residents, regardless of whether they are in the public or private sectors. The reason that I've taken this time to speak to you is that I feel that Goffstown has some decisions to make for several reasons that will affect our futures. The first reason is that it is not a controversial statement to suggest that these aren't the best of times. Way too many residents are hurting financially. The news from different sources has lots of information about the state of the economy and how it has affected so many people, including New Hampshire residents. Is this really the best time to become aggressive with new spending? The school district has asked the voters to approve articles that could increase the school portion of the property taxes by as much as 20%, according to some preliminary data calculated by the chairman of the Budget Committee. Is the timing correct based on the state of the New Hampshire economy? Some voters clearly don't think so. The problem that also won't go away is that if any budget increases at an average of 7.2% per year over a long period of time, whether it is for operating budgets or for capital improvements, then that total budget package will double every decade, regardless of whether it is paid from local, state, or other stealth taxes. At the $56 million level, budgets that double every decade can become readily attention-getting. Do the math yourself. If that budget growth isn't supported by an expansion of revenue sources and tax base, local taxpayers will pay. If the state is forced to downshift all education expenses, then that doubling of taxes could occur in roughly 1 year, since local property taxes only pay about 45% of the local school budget. Another decision that Goffstown may need to make is whether it will be inspired by attack politics, such as that exhibited in a letter to the editor, Goffstown News, on February 23rd. On that date, 54 residents signed a letter to the editor directly targeting Guy Caron, an elected Budget Committee member known for his extraordinary commitment to Goffstown taxpayers and conservative viewpoints. Is that how Goffstown wishes to treat its elected officials? Maybe an apology is due. The 54 signers of the letter to the editor also reminded Goffstown voters that Guy Caron was up for re-election. That same reminder should also apply to other incumbents and new volunteers vying for office. The school board might actually benefit very much from an addition of new, very qualified members. Maybe the focus of the school board should be on taxpayers and children first, preparing students for their future and not protecting administrators' futures might actually become a future rallying cry. If you are concerned about expensive and unaccountable public education, then vote for fiscally conservative candidates in the upcoming election. Mark Warden's, who is a New Hampshire state representative, letter to the editor in GoffstownToday.com accurately assesses new candidates, in my opinion. It's not enough to just go vote, although that's important. It's critical that we encourage our friends and neighbors to also vote for conservative candidates. Who are these conservatives? Who will help rein in runaway government spending and largesse? In the school board race, Bill Bates is a clear choice. Alan Yaton and Dan Cloutier would round out my 3 votes for 3 openings in that race. Roughly 2/3 of your property taxes go to government schools, so it is imperative that we elect to this board people who respect the taxpayer. Cloutier is very conscientious and understands budgets. Yaton was only one of 3 on the planning board to vote against huge increases in impact fees. Heiko and Warden were the other 2. For Budget Committee for a 3-year term, Guy Caron and Jeff Wall are the taxpayer's choice. Guy's masterful knowledge of town budgets is crucial in guiding rational thinking during the budget process. For Planning Board, Richard Meany and Alan Yaton are committed to defending property rights and have shown support for facilitating commercial development in Goffstown to help reduce the burden of property taxes on residential owners. Goffstown does indeed function on democratic principles. In a democracy, there can be many different viewpoints on how to accomplish some things that are very important. Cooler heads usually prevail in normal times. Ultimately, Goffstown voters will get the government that it deserves and elects. Do some homework. Study the issues. Research the candidates, and then go vote your preference. Ultimately, Goffstown will end up where it is headed. If that direction doesn't seem so good at the moment, then it must be changed until there are different circumstances. One thing is definitely certain in Goffstown. Goffstown residents who choose not to go to the polls cannot criticize, condemn, or complain about the results. It is just the way that it is. Democracy requires participation. What will you do? Thank you very much for listening to me.